Hi everyone, this is Nick Pushak. I'm the Director for Standards at the LEDES Oversight Committee, and I wanted to explain the LEDES 98B file in some detail and show you how you could create one manually using Excel. So the best place to start is to go to the LEDES homepage, which is ledes.org, and on the homepage under LEDES Standards, there's data exchange formats, billing formats, and the first format is the LEDES 98B format. When you go there, you'll see that you can download a sample file and also the specifications for the files. So let's take both files. We'll take the specification and we'll get the sample file. Sample file comes as the link is a view of the text, and so you can either just copy and paste this to a notepad, or you might be able to right-click on the link and download it as a file. I'm just going to copy and paste it and then go to my LEDES file. I'll do it from scratch here, and we'll just say new text file and LEDES 98B sample, and then just paste in the text. And this is a sample LEDES 98B file, but as you can see, it's a little hard to read because the field delimiter is this pipe symbol, and then it quickly gets out of orientation here. So I'm going to show you how you can import this into Excel and really edit the file a lot easier. So we're just going to save that file, and then I'm also going to open up this Excel document which we downloaded, which is the specification for LEDES 98B, because we'll be using this to understand the fields of the file. So we'll have that open. I'll put that over here. And then we can just say File, Open, and navigate to this LEDES file that I've just downloaded, or sample. So it's in my LEDES folder and inside here. And what you need to do is say select all files, and then you can double click on the text file, and a wizard will show up which allows you to import the file, and it is clearly a field delimited file. My data has headers, which is the top row, and then you want to put a vertical bar or pipe symbol for the delimiter, and then you'll see it quickly aligns the data nicely, and then you can really just say finish. You don't need to format. You'd like everything to be general so that you can edit it more easily. And presto changeo, we have the LEDES file in a spreadsheet. So let's go through what a LEDES 98B file has. The first line of a LEDES 98B file must contain this string, LEDES 98B, and then every line of text must end with the 2 square brackets. So you see that on the first line, and then the next line is the names of the columns. And what I like to do is if I click here and then double click here, it will widen everything to be able to see the full field names. So the second line has the field names. Those names you're going to see line up with the specification document which I opened up. So invoice date, invoice number, client ID, law firm matter ID. And as we scroll across, you'll see all the fields that make up a LEDES file, ending with client matter ID, and then again, every line must end with those 2 square brackets. Very important. So this is a sample LEDES file. We'll take a look at this first, and then what we can do is simply edit this file to make our own LEDES file. And so let's go field by field. The first field is invoice date, and that must be in the year, month, day format with no spaces or dashes or slashes. Next, and that's the overall invoice date. Then we have the invoice number. It can be a string up to 20 characters, documented over here. Then we have the client ID, and that is the law firm assigned client code that the law firm has assigned to that client. Okay, so if you're a law firm, that's going to be your ID for the client. Now that might come from the ebilling system, so you want to check with them to understand what the client ID is. Next, we have the law firm's matter ID. That would be the client matter number or the matter number at the law firm. Okay, so this is sort of the client matter number separated as two fields. And notice that in the sample invoice, we actually have two different matters being billed here. Most LEDES files are for a single matter, but you can enter multiple matters on one LEDES file. And actually, notice here the invoice number changed. So this last line here is defining a second invoice. So the first set here of 6 lines or 5 lines makes up one invoice, and then this is a second invoice here starting with this last line. But again, most LEDES files, all the invoice numbers are the same. It's a single, many e-billing systems require you to submit one invoice per file. So this is just an example of how you can do multiple, but it's not done too often. This is going to be the total invoice amount, and that's this field here. It's required. Again, in this example, we have 2 invoices. So that's why the total invoice number changes. But notice that many of these fields just keep repeating over and over again. You're going to see in a minute as we get further along with the fields that the data changes from line to line, but a lot of these early lines, like the invoice number, the billing start date and end date, which again is year, month, day, with the leading zeros for days and months. So this should always be 8 characters for dates. Then this is the invoice description. This can be upwards of 15,000 characters, but most people don't have too lengthy of an invoice description here. Then we get to line number. So this is the first field that is actually changing for each line. And every line in an invoice, and again, this makes up one invoice and this makes up another invoice, every line should have a unique line number, whether it's a fee or an expense. And the number can be any number. It doesn't have to start with 1, but it's pretty common to start with 1 sequentially. But they just have to be unique numbers for each line in the file. Then we get into the, so let's just scroll down here. We have the whether the entry is a fee or an expense, so F and E. And then there's also an IF and IE that's all defined right here. The invoice level fees or invoice level expense versus a line item fee or line item expense. So the E and F are these are 3 line item fee records and 2 expense line items. This last invoice here is a single entry for a invoice level fee. Next, we have the number of units for that line item. So with fees, this would be the number of hours. And for expenses, it would be the number of units of that item. So this is defined right here, number of units. Next, we have any adjustment amount, which would be like a discount that could be applied by the law firm for the line item. So if you're discounting, in this example, a fee entry, it can be discounted by a certain amount. And then we have the line item total. It's a little odd, but I believe further over we're going to have the unit amount here. So you don't want to rearrange these columns, but it is a little odd that the unit amount, so these are the hourly rates for the 3 fee items, and then these are the unit amounts for the different expense items here. Okay, so that's the unit amounts. We'll come back to that. So the line item total here is, if you see over here, it is the line item unit cost times the number of units plus any adjustment. A negative number would be a discount for a line item. And that is applied after the multiplication of the units by the unit amount. Next, we have the line item date, which would be the date of the fee or services. And then we have, for fees, we have the task codes and the activity codes here and here. And then for expenses, we have the expense codes. These are typically the UTBMS codes, which can be found on the LEDES website also. The ebilling, or the client, will define what codes should be used or allowed to be used here for task-based billing. Then for fees, we need to have the timekeeper ID. This is the unique identifier for the timekeeper. We're going to see in a minute we have the timekeeper's name over here. Okay, but the timekeeper ID is typically a number that identifies the timekeeper. Every law firm must produce a set of timekeepers and their IDs that they will be using. And this has to be the ID, and then this is the name, and then this is the classification. I'll show you in a minute. So here is the timekeeper ID. Here's the timekeeper name, and then the classification can be. The list of valid timekeeper classifications can be found on the LEDES website under LEDES Standards, Data Elements, and then the document is called LOC Revised Timekeeper Classification Codes. Next, we have the line item description, which for fees, this would be the services work performed. And then for expenses, this would be a description of the expense. Then we have the law firm ID. So this is typically the tax ID of the law firm. And that is right here. But it could be some other identifier for the firm. But a lot of times it's going to be the tax ID of the firm. When a firm has multiple locations, you might have multiple different IDs within the e-billing system. This was the unit cost that we came over and noticed. It is sort of out of order, but it's just arranged that way. Timekeeper name, the classification of the timekeeper, and then last but not least is the client matter ID. And this is the identifier from the corporation. So it's the client assigned matter code, which you must get from the client. So the ID over here is the ID of the matters from the law firm's perspective, and then the last field at the end is the ID of that matter from the corporation's perspective. Okay, so those numbers are usually different, and this is one of the most important fields for e-billing to allow the corporation to understand what matter is being billed. And it must be the matter ID assigned by the corporation for that matter. So those are the fields that make up a LEDES file, and if we start editing these, we'll just get rid of this last one because we simply want a single invoice matter. And we'll put in 2018, let's do today, which is 0919, and that's going to be for every entry here. The invoice number, we'll just make up a number, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 is our invoice number. Again, I'm just going to paste down. This would be the client and matter IDs at the law firm. So this could be 001, and we probably need to go space 001, or why don't I go 101, and then the matter would be matter 102. Again, I'm just making up client matter numbers for some hypothetical matter. The invoice will be, let's say, $1,000. Need to find one without dollar signs because we can't have the dollar signs in there. Oh, I know what we can do. If I just put in the dollar amount, I think I can go 2 decimal places like this. Okay, so we need to have that format for amounts with 2 decimal places, no dollar signs. Billing start date, end date, so let's say it was for August 2018, 0801 to 2018, 0831. I believe there's 31 days in August. For services rendered, let's do contract work on Smith matter. I don't know. A little bit of a description. Again, you repeat. So all these first set of fields here get repeated. Line numbers 1 through 5 will work fine. And we'll just stay with 3 fee items and 2 expense items, but clearly, depending upon what type of line items you want to send, you are going to put F or E there. We'll say we have 4 hours, 3 hours, and 5 hours of work. This would be 1 expense of each for the expense items. And let's say this one is $100. Again, if we want the decimal places, we just use this icon to get 2 decimal places over, and we'll say this is $300. So we have a $100 and a $300 expense in the invoice. I'm not going to have any discounts on this invoice, but this is where we could put in discounts. If we wanted to apply discounts, they would go in as negative. And the line item total is going to be the units times the unit cost. So let's say we have the first attorney is going to be $400 an hour, and the second attorney is $300 an hour, and then our unit costs here are 100 and 300 with the line item total to there. So, because we just have one unit of these expenses, and these are the unit amounts, and we'll make all these have those extra decimal places. So we have $400 an hour for this attorney, $300 for this attorney, a $100 expense, and a $300 expense. We'll leave these expense codes. I don't know exactly what they are. These actually may be the expense codes descriptions for the E111 and E110, but we could expand here the description. These do not have to be the expense code descriptions. This is a free-form description area with a pretty decent length, I believe, for that description. Let's look that up just to understand it. Line item description can be up to 15,000 characters in length there, so you can have pretty lengthy descriptions here. We'll stay with these task and activity codes. Don't know exactly what they are, but you use task and activity codes here. The timekeeper IDs, these seem a little odd, so let's say this is timekeeper 1001, 1002, and, oh no, these are, first two entries are for the same timekeeper, 1001, and we'll say 1002 for this timekeeper, and let's change their names. This is going to be Smith Jack Smith, and this is going to be Jones, Jane Jones, and Jack Smith, and partner, associate, that sounds fine. These are classification IDs. I'll document what your choices are for there. This is clearly not going to have to be edited, so this would be like client matter number. A lot of law firms go like 2018, which is the year dash 0047 437. So that might be something that the corporation would use as their matter number, and that's what you would put there. Make sure you leave the brackets at the end there. So line item dates, this is the dates of service, so we skipped over that. Let's say this was all in August, so August 10th. Oops. The second one was for August 11th. This one was for August 10th because that's a different attorney. And then our expenses are from the 5th, and the other expense was from August 12th. Now we have to make sure our totals come out right, so the way this total works, we can actually use a formula here. So if we say the total equals the line number of units times the line item cost, and we could actually put in the discount if we wanted there. So plus any line item adjustment. And then if I paste that down, that should work, and then we can add again the two decimal places. So that should be the line item totals. And then if we add those up here, we could see what our invoice total should be, 4,700, which would go here as the line invoice total, 4,700. Okay, so what we're doing here is showing that now this would just be like if I had a $10 or let's say $100 discount that would go to 1,500. This would be 46. We'd have to change this for the invoice total to 46, but we're not going to have, you know what, I'll leave that there. We'll have a $100 discount on this one line item for this one attorney, which is not per unit, it is the total discount for the line item. So notice it's not reducing his rate from 400 to 300, it's reducing the total for that line item by $100. So now our total is 4,600, which we would want to adjust here. We could probably put a formula in for that. And there we go. So we don't want this piece of information, but that should be a legitimate LEDES file now that could be submitted if the information matches up. The invoice date, invoice number is important. These numbers, this might have to match a client identifier that the corporation wants you to use, but the most important thing to match up is their client, their matter number that they want you to use for billing that matter. Now, how do we can't submit the spreadsheet, so we have to save this as a text file. And this is a little tricky, but watch what we can do. So I'm going to first save the file. I believe since it was opened as a text file, let's see. I think I'm going to go save as, and we're going to put it in this directory, and we'll save it once as a text file. So let's put it as LEDES 98B for invoice 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, I think. But I don't think that it's going to look too good because it's going to be tab delimited. So do you want to keep this using this format? Yes. But so if we look at what was created, I can open it with Notepad, I believe. It's tab delimited, and that's the problem because we need to have pipe symbols in there. So one option that's available to you is to simply highlight one of the tabs. You have to like drag across there, copy that, and then go in, probably click at the top, then go into replace, paste with Control V that tab, and then put in the vertical bar pipe symbol, replace all, and it will replace all the tabs with pipes. You need to get rid of those additional pipes or vertical bars, making sure each line ends with a bracket, no blank lines at the bottom. So make sure you have no blank lines, that everything ends right there, and there's no spaces after that character. And you might want to just double check that there's no spaces at the end of each line, that it ends with those two brackets. Another alternative I'll show you. So what you can do is if you go to your control panel and go to region and language and go under advanced settings, you can change the list separator from a comma to just type in a pipe symbol or vertical bar. And now when we save the file, save as, we can save it as a CSV, okay, and the CSV will have the pipe symbol in it. So watch when we go to look at this file now. If I open it up with Notepad, it has the pipe symbols. So we have some extra lines here which we can just simply get rid of, and we don't want all the pipe symbols on that first line. So the first line must be like that, pipe symbols going across on all the lines, every line ending in the brackets and including that descriptive line. And this is now a legitimate LEDES 98B file that can be submitted. So hopefully that was a good little video on how to create a LEDES file. Thanks everyone. Bye-bye.